Thank you a lot. Alistair E. McGrath is a person who is particularly sweet to dealing with the relationship between science and faith. This is related to his biography. Born in 1943, Belfast, Northern Ireland, he witnesses tension and sectarian riots, which made him negatively inclined towards his faith. Already in his school years, when he became strongly interested in natural sciences, he became an atheist. As he claims, the main reasons for this decision were rational and related to the conviction that the natural sciences are able to explain the entire world around us. He learned German and Russian not only to read foreign scientific articles, but also to read the works of atheist thinkers Marx, Engels, and Lenin in the original. He studied chemistry at the University of Oxford before becoming a PhD in molecular biophysics and working at the University of Cambridge. During his studies, learning more and more about the complexity of nature, he began to rediscover the intellectual depths of Christianity. Even before completing his doctoral studies, he enrolled in a theology course. While at Cambridge, he studied for holy orders in the Church of England. Then he was ordinated. He began lecturing on Christian doctrine and ethics at the University of Oxford. He was awarded the title of professor at the same university, where he lectures to this day. This paper will present McGrath's views and findings on several topics at the intersection of science and religion. It will be issue of various models of the relationship between theology and natural sciences, the use of these sciences as a source for theology, and the issue of creation. Point number 1, models of the relationship between science and theology. McGrath says that in order to classify what models of mutual relations between science and theology we are dealing with, two questions must be answered. They are, do natural sciences and theology refer to the same reality? Do the claims of these sciences and claims of theology contradict and complement each other? The two main groups into which such models can be divided are so-called confrontational models and non-confrontational models. The former oppose theology and natural sciences. Their relationship is expressed to the terms conflict and war. Historically speaking, the beginning of such a description of this case falls at the end of the 19th century. The works of J.W. Draper and A.D. White show theology as a field of knowledge that has fought and hindered the development of science over the centuries. They present these teachings as a factor leading to the liberation of humanity from antiquated and limited religious concepts and Christian thought patterns, which particular emphasis on Catholics ones. The development of such a position was closely related to these discoveries of science and to the greatest extent to C. Darwin's theory of the origin of species. While the opinion of the two scientists mentioned earlier became widespread in society. This sense of contagion was also fueled, at least in an English society, by the struggle for supremacy in the university environment between cleric scientists and secular scientists, who often viewed clergy and religion with antipathy and even hostility. Darwin's discoveries about the struggle of species for survival gave the conflict a scientific basis. Only the strongest and fittest could survive. McGrath notes that because of this, the perception of clergy changed from the early to late 19th century, from the widespread acceptance of priest-scientists to the perception of all members of the clergy as enemies of scientific progress. Hostiles were not only to be found on a scientific side. The North American Protestant current called fundamentalism, whose period of greatness splendor falls on the years 1940, strongly opposed science and theology. It was particularly opposed to the theory of evolution and its atheistic interpretation. They went to such extremes as claiming that the Darwinian theory was an invention of the devil designed to deceive Christians and diminishing God's power over the world. McGrath notes that there are no scientific attitudes among Christians today as well. This is especially the case in Protestant circles. However, nowadays the main environment promoting the war model is the environment of supporters and activists of the new atheism. An example is R. Dawkins, who in his two well-known polemical works, The God Delusion and The Blind Watchmaker, openly criticized religion along with theology. It reproduced the 19th century views that only the science leads to the development of humanity and religion prevents it, and that these two fields are completely opposite and irreconcilable. The second model defines the relationship between theology and science as friendly and compatible with each other. In this case, two approaches can be distinguished. McGrath classifies both of them as not non-confrontational, but they are different. According to him, the first approach can be described with the words science and theology coincide. It is based on the assumption that every truth, regardless of source we learn it from, comes from God. If so, then the truth of revelation and the truth of science cannot be contradictory. On the contrary, they should complement each other. According to thinkers who say so, the findings of science should be positively assessed and, if necessary, some truths of faith should be adapted to them. The second approach emphasized that theology and the natural sciences are separate and different from each other. Theologians such as K. Barth and L. Gilkey, for example, argue that the two fields are not contradictory, but there is no connection between them either. This is because they use different methods, have different assumptions, and explore completely different realities. Natural sciences answers the question how, while theology answers the question why. Point number 2, ancilla theologia. A special kind of connection between science and theology is possibility of using the development methodology and concepts of the former to develop the later. This is a very important topic for McGrath, widely described and postulated by him as a path to dialogue with the modern world, which has a very positive attitude towards science. Ancilla theologia is a Latin term meaning handmaiden serf of theology, defined as the practice of applying philosophical or cultural ideas as a companion or dialogue partner to Christian theology. In other words, it is the use by theologians of the achievements of other fields of knowledge and science in order to develop Christian thought. McGrath notes that this way of proceeding he accompanied theology almost since the beginning of Christianity. The first philosophy that inspires theologians was Platonism, especially in the later reinterpretation of Plotinus. Among the fathers of the Church who used these philosophical systems as ancilla theologia, St. Augustine should be mentioned in the first place. Although this practice has been used since the first ecumenical councils. Another theologian who went down in history as using philosophical concept developed in antiquity is St. Thomas Aquinas. Using Aristotle's philosophy, he introduced into theological thought a large number of new approaches to the great themes of the Christian faith and concepts. Practices reassembling those used in theology can also be found in other sciences. Physics and mathematics can be treated in similar ways. Physics very often use tools created by mathematics. A great example would be use of geometry in Einstein's theory of relativity. In McGrath terms, one might say that mathematics is ancilla physicae. Due to lack of time, I will go to the summary. In conclusion, several important conclusions can be drawn. McGrath believes that theology, like the natural sciences, is a posteriori science. This means that it is done following the facts, and its findings are based on experience. In this case, on the fact of revelation. Both theology and science are concerned with the study of reality. Among the various ways of looking at the relationship between theology and natural sciences, the most important for McGrath is treating these sciences as ancilla theologiae. He took his idea directly from T.F. Torrance, but it has present in theology science at least the Middle Ages. McGrath considers in the order prevailing in it to be the most important feature of a created world, which is stated in both the natural sciences and theology. Thank you a lot.
Thank you very much.